Well, it seems that everything is in a state of flux around the world, whether you want to talk about Israel and the government that has not yet been formed there. Now then, with the resignation of Pope Benedict XVI, now that's all up in the air. So there's a lot of change going on. Things are still pinning very much in Syria. Egypt is having more political riots. And so everything is up in the air right now. However, in the middle of all this, President Obama has announced that he will be going to Israel in March. And it hasn't been talked about much, and he omitted it from his State of the Union speech this week. But all the rumors are saying that it looks like there's going to be a new peace initiative in the Middle East. Now, everybody knows that back on November the 29th of 2012, the United Nations voted to recognize non-member statehood for Palestine. Israel said loud and clear, this will not change a thing. But it has. There's just no doubt about it. It has changed a lot. It was a master maneuver on the part of Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinians. Now the vote has been taken. They were outvoted 138-9. It has thrown Israel in the position of an occupier. Israel knows full well that the tentacles of world government are closing in on not only Israel, but the entire world. Benjamin Netanyahu understands this very well. He was a ambassador to the United Nations from Israel. He's been prime minister of Israel. He's prime minister of Israel again now. He's been there. He's done that. He understands all of the pressures that are closing in. And he also realizes it's a changing world, that international law is gaining more and more power. He watched as the international community overthrew the regime of Muammar Gaddafi. He watched as the international community would have overthrown the regime of Bashar Assad if Russia and China had not used its veto power to save Assad. And so Benjamin Netanyahu knows very well where he stands. He knows that only the veto power of the United States of America stands between Israel and total subjugation to the international community. He also knows that Barack Obama does not see things as he sees things. Obama has pressured him repeatedly to return to 1967 borders. And so Netanyahu sees very clearly where he sits right now. Now, beyond that, he lost big ground in the elections. They expected to win about 40 seats in the elections. Instead, they won 31. Consequently, he cannot form a government by himself. He has to have one of two parties. Well, those two parties have now gone into coalition together, and they know that Netanyahu cannot form a government without them. So consequently, they have agreed that one will not join the coalition without the other. If, in fact, Netanyahu cannot agree with Mr. Bennett or Mr. Lapid, then he's not going to be able to form a government. He has 30 days to form that government. If he is unsuccessful, he can ask for a 14-day extension. If that is unsuccessful, then someone else will be asked to form the government. And if Mr. Lapid would form the government, if he's the one that has the next largest number of votes, so if he and Mr. Bennett and Zippy Livni and the Labor Party all got together, yes, they could cobble together a government. Well, Mr. Netanyahu knows that his future is in jeopardy, that he can move into a situation. Consequently, he is negotiating. He made very generous offers to Mr. Bennett and his Israeli Home Party. However, it did not work. Mr. Bennett is holding strong in his coalition with Mr. Lapid. Between the two of them, they have 31 votes in the Knesset, and that's as many as Mr. Netanyahu has. So consequently, they have as many votes as Netanyahu does, and they probably would be in a better position to negotiate with Labor, which has, I think, 15 votes. So consequently, Netanyahu finds himself in a very untenable position right now. Now, they're demanding that he do two things, that he commit to the Palestinian peace process, and also that he break the back of the religious faction in Israel. The religious faction, up till now, they have refused to become a part of the military. They live off of state welfare pretty much, and consequently, it's very resented by so many people. Israeli taxes are very high, and all these people have large families, and they're living off of the government right now. So it not only does Lapid, but also Bennett agree that it's time to break the back of that. That means the Shah's party and the other religious party, their influence would have to be broken. They would have to be left out of here by themselves, which could easily happen. But nevertheless, there's a lot of complications taking place. Now, what I want to do today, I want to draw the picture of where things really are right now. And here's why. The Bible says that the status of Jerusalem is going to be the focus of the battle of Armageddon. The Bible says there's going to be a peace deal done before the battle of Armageddon, 7 years before the battle. So I want to make sure that you understand what's working right now in the present negotiations as Netanyahu is struggling to put a coalition together, to put a government together. I want to bring to you what the actual factors are. There's an article, Encountering Peace, Netanyahu, the Peacemaker. And I want to just read some excerpts to you. Yair Lapid said that he will not join a coalition that does not renew negotiations. Zippy Livni and Shaul Mafaz as well gave the push, and Netanyahu has succumbed to the, quote, will of the people. Outgoing intelligence agency's Minister Dan Meridor of Likud says 80% of the people want the government to advance peace with the Palestinians. The morning of a new dawn has come to Israel. But Netanyahu, does he really want to enter into serious negotiations with the Palestinians, or is this just another tactic to gain international and local favor by negotiating but not making the tough decisions that could actually enable the negotiations to succeed? Now, Netanyahu is not stupid, and he is certainly not unaware of the content of the previous rounds of negotiations. He must also be aware that the Palestinians will not agree to backtrack. They will not restart the negotiations from a point earlier than where they were when Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas held their last meeting. Now, let me make sure you understand what's being said here. Ehud Olmert and Mahmoud Abbas came very close to a peace deal. Now, Olmert was considered quite liberal. And so he probably offered the Palestinians more than Netanyahu would want to offer. However, it is generally agreed that once an Israeli politician makes an offer, that it's going to be almost impossible to wind the clock back and say, well, he made that offer, but I won't. And Abbas has said the same thing. We're not going to go back and restart the negotiations from a point earlier than where they were left off. So the pressures are going to be to start where Ehud Olmert and Mahmoud Abbas let off. Now, Netanyahu, the article goes on to say, certainly cannot believe, as Yair Lapid suggested in the campaign, that it is possible to convince the Palestinians to give up East Jerusalem. This particular writer is saying it's just not going to be possible to convince the Palestinians to do that. Now, why he would make such a statement, I do not know for sure, except the Palestinians have said it over and over and over and over and over again. And now then, the United Nations General Assembly recognized a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. So now they have the weight of the international community behind them. However, they still have the U.S. veto power at the U.N. Security Council to protect the nation of Israel. So That's where we find ourselves right now. Yet the United States itself has not recognized Israel's right to East Jerusalem. We have refused to put our embassy in Jerusalem, even though we have a law that says we must. And President Obama was very angry at Netanyahu because he continued to build in East Jerusalem during the moratorium. So you can see that Obama, the United States, and most of the world pretty well have their mind made up that Israel is going to give back East Jerusalem. And, well, I'm going to read some more things to you about what they plan as far as the borders are concerned. The parameters of an Israeli-Palestinian peace deal are known to Netanyahu. They have been on the table for years, and Netanyahu refused to touch them even with a 10-foot pole. So what is different now? Is Netanyahu suddenly ready to accept a deal that he has rejected until now? Sources close to Netanyahu have told me he would accept a deal that would include a 10% annexation of the West Bank with no territorial swaps. There is not a Palestinian alive that would accept such a deal. The Palestinians will not give in on the principle that their state will be 22% of the land between Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. From their perspective, this is what was agreed to in Oslo when they recognized Israel on 78% of the land. Israel will be able to annex about 4% of the West Bank in exchange for uninhabited lands inside of Israel proper, enabling the settlement blocks to fall under Israeli sovereignty, but not much more than that because equitable land for the swap inside of Israel does not exceed much beyond that. In other words, what they're saying is Israel is saying we cannot give you the population centers such as Ma'ale Adumim, Gush Etzion, and those places near Jerusalem where we have large concentrations of Jewish population. Well, the Palestinians have already said, okay, we understand that, we'll trade you. You give us equal amount of acreage elsewhere. Since that was bare land when you took it in 1967, you've built cities there. Okay, we'll trade you what was bare land back then for bare land now. And so consequently, it's sort of been agreed that Israel will return to 1967 borders with land swaps. Now, Netanyahu has not agreed up until now, but it looks like with all the developments, his weakness in the elections, the UN action, he's changing his mind.